that's what Coach Collins was great for. You know, I mean, he's a personable coach. He loves people. You know, I talk about how, you know, he's, you know, a touching coach. He will put hands on you, but in a good way. Now, when Coach Collins came and sat in y'all house, you know, can you explain kind of what went on, you know, with your grandmother really wanting you to you know, go there, or, you know, how she took to Coach Collins?
Well, let me start off by saying and then explaining the relationship between my grandmother and I. You know, my mother was young when she had my older brother and I. I mean, my mother was 15 when she had my older brother, 19 when she had me. So we lived a lot, and we spent a lot of that time with my grandmother, of course, because my mom, one, had to finish school, two, now she's working all the time. So a lot of that time was spent with my grandmother. So my grandmother to me was more like a mother than a grandmother. And a lot of the life lessons that I live by and who made me as a person come through her. So she, you know, meant a whole lot to me. And anybody that knows me knows that. Mm-hmm. So she was also one of those people, you know, and this is what the great grandparents are, man. They read people, and they read people really well. Right. So it wasn't just, you know, when we were going through the recruiting process, she was really quiet. She'd sit back and she'd observe people. So I was really kind of left to this on my own recognizance of filling out schools and filling out people. But with her, she immediately, from day one, was like, I don't like him, meaning Bruce Pearl. Mm. I don't like him. I don't trust him. I don't trust his eyes. She loved Coach Haskins, who was up at Coach Clem, who was at Minnesota at the time. Right. And she loved Coach C. And it was really because of, and like you said, you played for him, you know him. It's really because of the person he is. He comes across as extremely genuine. He's extremely genuine. He's extremely easy to talk to. I think he cares about his players. I know he cared about me, you know, but I think he cared about every player that he recruited. You know, not all maybe on the same level, but you definitely knew as a player, if he was recruiting you, that he had your back. And that's the way I felt with Coach. But I remember sitting in the living room with my grandma rather, and I was like, Brandon, you know, where do you want me to go to school? You know, when we were coming down to decision time. Right. She was like, you know, UCLA is too far away. I'll never get to see you. Same thing with Arizona. She says, you know, Coach Clem is really nice, but it's too cold up there. I'm not coming to Minnesota to watch you play. And then she was like, and like I told you, I don't like Bruce Pearl, so I don't want you to go there. I'd feel better if you went to Illinois. One, because I know that Jimmy, meaning Coach Collins, Jimmy Collins, would take care of you and that you would not have any problems. That if you were hurt or you were something like this, which was, of course, the biggest concern of my grandmother was, and anybody that know her or knew her would tell you, and this is the way I was raised, wouldn't accept a dime if you did not earn it. Your job is to go out and earn what it is that you keep. Just like it says in the Bible, you reap what you sow. And that's how we were raised. That's how my grandmother raised me. And that's how I am. That's why that whole Iowa thing is some BS. You know, I remember, and I'll tell you this, we used to have holes in our roof, bro. And when it would rain, I mean, you'd hear the rain coming through the roof, you know, hitting in them pots, and it sounded like a jazz band was going on. Right. But she would have never taken a dime. And so, like I said, that was who I learned from. And that's where my character comes from. And that's why all of that was, you know, a complete farce. Right. But, you know, it is what it is. But she loved Coach C. And like you said, Coach, and this is where I think a lot of coaches today miss out on, you have to be great in that living room. Coach was great in that living room. One, because I think he was genuine enough that parents and kids understood that, you know, he was there for you. And that's how I felt. And that was really the reason I chose to go to Illinois, because like you said, there were a bunch of other schools that were out there.
So now, you know, you leave Illinois. When people don't know, you was a 28th draft pick, you know, with Dallas. Now you chose to go to Europe. Now I'm going to give the spiel first. Now I'm going to come back and ask my question. You wind up, just some stats, you know, you wind up, you know, you went over to, you won an Israeli championship. You won the Israeli Cup. And then you won the EuroLeague 2 times. Now, my first question is, you opted to go to Europe for kids nowadays, and we talk about AU, people that have that high hopes. That's obviously one for anybody that plays. I want to go to the NBA, but the I coach junior college. We'll get into that in a minute. We go as we winding down. You have to use basketball for what it's for, and again, it's a vehicle. So if you couldn't go, or you was in the NBA, but you chose to go to Europe, and it actually, from my reading and my research, they actually really kind of classify it as like one of the greatest European basketball players to ever come over there and play. And like, that's huge. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when me and Notary say legend, people don't really understand, Deon Thomas. And, I can, pat your back because I know that, you're a humble guy. You probably won't do it. But they label you as one of the greatest players to come over to Europe and play ever. What caused you to say, you know what, I ain't going to try to do this NBA. I'm going to go over here to Europe, getting back to what you said, with your granny. Mm-hmm. You work for everything that you get. You could have went to the NBA, sat on the bench, did some of those things. I don't want to answer your question because I don't know how you're going to answer it. But you go over to Europe and you make a name for yourself. For the kids nowadays that, want to go pro, man, I ain't going over to this country or going over to this country. Can you explain kind of the thought process of the two different leagues of NBA and Europe and why you chose it?
Well, let me start off from the beginning with why I chose to go to Europe instead of staying with Dallas. My senior year in high school, John B. McClendon, which a lot of the young people won't know, but he is creator of today's basketball, basically. Before John McClendon, basketball was slow paced. It was pass here. There was no fast breaks. But when he started coaching, he sped the game up. So we had the opportunity, Simeon High School and Simeon's boys team and Marshall's girls team had the opportunity to go and play in Amsterdam. And that was through John B. McClendon. He took us over there. We played. We were there, if I believe, like 10 days. So we played a lot of different teams over there on the professional level, actually. And, we went over there basically, and, bullshit you not, and dominate. And I won, the MVP in the majority of those games. But it wasn't the basketball that I really enjoyed and had a good time with. It was the people. It was the culture. It was just how the difference between the way people lived over there, how relaxed it was, how community and family and people oriented that they were, that I really enjoyed. So fast forward to my senior year, I get drafted by the Dallas Mavericks. My agent is in the process of working out the contract with Dallas, and in came a contract from Spain. Now this contract was equal to as far as money, but it exceeded what I would have made as a rookie in Dallas at that time, because, I didn't have to pay taxes. There was no living expenses that I would have to pay for, because in Europe they cover your housing and all of that stuff. So I don't have to pay all that. So all my money I'm getting is all of my money, basically.
Exactly. Right.
So with that in mind, and with the fact that I really enjoyed the European experience when we were there. I talked to Coach Collins, and Coach C was like, Deon, it doesn't matter where you play. What's important is at the end of the road, can you do what it is that you want to do in life and not what you have to do? And that's almost verbatim of what he told me.
Right.
And another thing, that kind of sets, me apart, I believe, from a lot of players is when I was coming up, Bill, I used basketball, to me, was only a tool to get to college. It was a tool to get, further in life and not have to stay in the circumstances that I was in. So it wasn't an NBA or bust for me. I wasn't so focused on that was the only. So after my conversation with Coach Collins, it made that decision easy. I was like, I can go over here, I can play, I can earn a really good living, I could see the world. I can experience things that most people will not experience. And if I choose to come back, then I can come back.
Right.
And,
Right.
you know, because like you said, I was playing well enough that it wasn't if I came back to Dallas and said, okay, well, you know what, I'm ready to come back, that they wouldn't assign me.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
mean, I was a 7-time All-Star when I was over there. You know, I was one of the leading scorers and you know, I was the leading scorer and rebounder for every team, but basically one of the top 5 leading scorers or rebounders in the league.